Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. We are, of course, back at it. This is another edition of a game preview. Couple of disclaimers here. Obviously, I am an Iowa Hawkeye fan. Inevitably, there will be Ohio State fans that watch this video. For what it's worth, I do my best to keep the information factual, aside from my analysis at the tail end and my analysis of the Iowa Hawkeyes, of course. That is opinion-based. Also, definitely not a Boston Red Sox fan. Just got the hat, like the way it looks. I don't really have any favorite MLB team, maybe the New York Yankees, but really the only team that I pay attention to a decent amount would be the Iowa Hawkeyes. So, all right, guys, let's dive into this. This is a huge game for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I cannot believe we're already, 5 or 6 games into the season. When I did my game-by-game prediction at the beginning of the season, and I gave scores for each of Iowa's games, I did not know that Iowa had a bye week. Okay. Do I think that, and that's on me. I'll take full accountability on that. Now, do I think that it's the biggest thing in the world that Iowa has a bye week and Ohio State did not coming into this contest? In all reality, Iowa has had mixed results coming out of bye weeks. Sometimes they've totally laid an egg. Other times they've done okay. I would say actually more often than not, especially big games that they have a bye week, they actually surprisingly don't do very well. Because I don't think Kirk Ferentz really changes much of what he does just because it's a bye week. I think he basically does the same thing. Now, where it does help, regardless of how Kirk Ferentz game plans and how he attacks the bye week, is it does allow Iowa to get healthy, get much needed rest, and much needed reps for the development of their team and players. But in the grand scheme of things, it's only 1 week. So if I made a Facebook post, if I were to put some points on how much I think that this matters, I'd maybe put like on a game spread, I'd maybe put it like 1.5 points in Iowa's favor. That's about it. So let's delve into Iowa versus Ohio State. This is a big game for both teams. Ohio State, of course, and Iowa, for that matter, have aspirations of winning the Big Ten. I think Ohio State, obviously, that's a year in, year out situation. For the Iowa Hawkeyes, the defense has mostly been solid, although I don't think it has quite lived up to expectations quite yet. Doesn't mean that they're not capable, but they have certainly been solid. They're still a really good unit. Offensively, Iowa comes into this contest with possibly the best running back in the entire nation, at least statistically, in Caleb Johnson, who actually hails from the state of Ohio. And so that will be something to monitor. I think the tough thing for Iowa is the passing game. They still are not quite where I would want them to be or even think they should be, especially when you consider how good the run game has been. It is almost astonishing that they have not had better numbers when we see the success that the Iowa run game has had. Before we delve into the stats for this game, the tough thing for Iowa, of course, is going to be where this game is played. On the road is a really tough proposition. If this was at home for Iowa, I would have a little bit more hope. But most of the hope that I have is predicated on the improvement of Iowa's run game. That is what inches this a little bit forward, but we're going to delve into that further. But again, on the road is very difficult. But we've seen this past weekend, Michigan versus Minnesota. Minnesota went on the road and put up a fight, dang near winning that game. It came down to an onside kick at which they initially recovered, but it was called back because the player was ahead of the line of scrimmage. And of course, Iowa ended up putting a beat down on Minnesota. But the main point of reference there is the fact that Minnesota was on the road. ESPN Football Power Index gives Ohio State an nearly 90% chance to win this game. Will Howard has 1,039 yards, 8 tubs, 2 INTs, compared to McNamara's 588, 3 tubs, 2 INTs. Caleb Johnson with 685 yards on the ground, including 9 touchdowns. Judkins has 390 yards, 5 TDs. And Jay Smith, 364 yards receiving, 5 tubs. Jacob Gill, 145 yards, 1 tub. Here are the last 5 contests for each team. Ohio State defeated Michigan State most recently on the road pretty convincingly. Marshall, Western Michigan. I mean, realistically, outside of their game against Michigan State, Ohio State has not played the best competition, to say the least. I mean, Akron, Western Mij, Marshall. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. I mean, I'm not saying Iowa's schedule has been daunting thus far, but I would still say that Iowa's has slightly been better. Let's see what the point spread is for this game. I'm not sure that they even have it yet. Looks like they don't have it yet. I'll look at some other betting markets and see if there's some early numbers. So I was able to find it. Ohio State comes into this game 4-0. And of course, they are a 17.5-point favorite according to FanDuel. And the over and under is set at 42.5. So, all right, last, we're going to take a look at some of the team stats here. By the way, guys, there was an article that was released by 247 Sports Hawk Insider that gave the top 10 Iowa Pro Football Focus rated guys. And Cade McNamara actually, I can't remember if he was top 10, but he actually had a better grade than I was stunned to see the grade that he had. He was above average according to PFF. So maybe a little bit more. This is just coming from an Iowa fan. Maybe he deserves a little bit more understanding as there have been a lot of drop balls and some of his, including Reese Vanderzee, wide receiver grades are quite low. The only wide receiver that has a decent grade is Jacob Gill. Every other wide receiver is average to below average. Total defense here. Ohio State has the second best total defense in the nation. Iowa is at 18. Ohio State's giving up 196.5 per game. Iowa 272.8. Man, Ohio State. Woo! But then again, so Minnesota had a really good defense coming into that game as well. But there's more numbers at this point. Let's take a look at scoring defense. Ohio State is number 1, only giving up 6.75 points per game. Iowa is 15th, giving up 13.75 points per game. Next, we're going to look at total offense, and then we might look at scoring offense. Ohio State 5th. I mean, man, they are. I mean, this is elite. This is what, when you think of an elite team, this is exactly the type of stuff that you expect to see. I mean, they're top 5, top 10 in every major category. So Iowa is on the second page, but they are much improved. Much improved. Iowa's offense, at least statistically, coming in at 65. Last year, they were last, if not close to last. They have 397.8, right behind Iowa State. And last but not least, let's look at scoring offense. Ohio State, yet again, fourth, averaging an astonishing 48.8 points per game. Unbelievable. That's crazy. They are almost averaging 50 points a game in college football. Iowa is 53rd. As an Iowa fan, that is beautiful to see. I mean, last year I was clamoring. If they can only be top 75, the sky's the limit. They're well above 75. 53rd, they are considered average to above average, which is just fine. Because what? There's 112 FBS teams, I believe. So if you're top 60, you're above. There's 133. So yeah, if you're top 60, you're in the top quarter there. So, all right, guys. Last but not least, I'm going to give my analysis of this game. Just get right to it. This is going to be a tough one for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Ohio State is highly talented. They're well coached. It's on the road. There's not a lot of glimmer of hope here. On top of that, Iowa, it's not like they have a Ricky Stanzi or a Brad Banks or a CJ Beathard that as an Iowa fan, you have the confidence that they might be able to go into Columbus and ball out and steal a victory. Of course, crazier things have happened. You know, Iowa could get some much needed assistance from the tight ends, and the tight ends could have a big day. You know, maybe Caleb Brown finally emerges, as he's been really quiet all year. I think he only has one catch thus far. But if I look purely at Cade McNamara, that is the issue. You know, I don't have confidence that Cade McNamara is going to go out there and slice and dice Ohio State's defense. That is the definition of an average quarterback. Iowa does, of course, have Caleb Johnson, but in order for Iowa to win on the shoulders of Caleb Johnson, they will also need to limit Ohio State and keep them to at least below, I would say, 25, at the most 30 points. But I would feel way more confident saying 25. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is if Iowa is to win this game, that what they should be shooting for is holding Ohio State to 25 or fewer points, which is a daunting task considering how talented Ohio State is. Now, Iowa is also very talented, as we see the amount of guys that they have in the NFL. They're one of the very few teams that keeps up with Ohio State in that regard. So this is going to be a tough one, guys. Of course, there was the Nate Stanley game. I think Iowa, what did they give up? 27 points, but they hung 50 on Ohio State en route to a victory, one of Nate Stanley's best games of all time. So I have it here. They beat Ohio State 55-24. So I was right. If you can keep Ohio State to below 25, you have a good chance. Of course, last year, Ohio State hung 54 points on the Hawkeyes, as Iowa's offense really did not help Iowa's defense at all. That was probably the most points. Ohio State putting 54 up on Iowa was probably close to about the same as the rest of the season for Iowa that they allowed defensively outside of the Tennessee game. So on top of that, Iowa will need to have takeaways, much like the Amani Hooker takeaway that they had early in the first quarter. And I just don't really see it. This Iowa defense is not the elite takeaway unit that we've seen in years past for Iowa with Josh Jackson, Amani Hooker, Desmond King. Jamari Harris is having a good year and has at least one takeaway that I know of, but we don't have collectively that situation. Again, doesn't mean that it can't ramp up and Iowa can't force a fumble or something like that, because those things can happen. And Iowa's defense is really good, and I wouldn't be surprised in the least if they're able to do that. Ohio State, from their perspective, they just don't, their mindset needs to be, let's just not beat ourselves. Let's not give in to how Iowa plays football. Let's not beat ourselves. Let's do what we need to do. Let's get the ball moving on the ground. Let's not throw any interceptions. Let's not fumble the football. Let's play good, sound football. I do believe Ohio State will win this game. I don't want to have any confusion there. Iowa having a bye week does give me a little bit more confidence, as I alluded to at the beginning of the game. But again, ultimately, where Iowa falls short is the fact that they don't have a quarterback that can will them to victory, especially on the shoulders of Caleb Johnson. And that is the rub right there. If they did have somebody, which I do think they do, they have guys that are talented that could possibly be that, but we're not going to see that. And it would take in Brendan Sullivan or Marco Lainez, but it would take Cade McNamara to likely struggle mightily, which if that's the case, it's highly likely that Iowa would be down 30-0 at that point by the time they decide to go to a different quarterback outside of Cade McNamara. I think Ohio State wins this game. I'm going to go 27-17. I think they win this game by double digits. I don't think it'll be the same shellacking that occurred last year, but I do think that Ohio State comfortably wins this game. And, you know, I just hope that Iowa is able to keep it competitive, because if Iowa is able to keep it competitive, then that will aid them, especially with the early season loss to Iowa State, in making the college football playoff. Now, ultimately, because they lost to Iowa State, even though Iowa State at this point is ranked, it's highly unlikely if Iowa loses to Ohio State that they will make the college football playoff. But nonetheless, if they're able to keep it close, that'll go a long way. So I think Ohio State wins comfortably, but I don't think that it will be the same trouncing that they laid to the Iowa Hawkeyes last year. I hope Caleb Johnson has a big game and continues. I would love to see Iowa have another Doak Walker Award winner. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, guys, drop below what you think the score will be for this game, including Ohio State fans. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious as to whether you guys actually believe Iowa's offense is improved. If from an opponent point of view, if Tim Lester has been a surprise to you, it definitely helps the video, and I respond to as many comments as I can. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow and facts our feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. I love you, Hawk fans. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.